Hello, everyone. Welcome to Luxoft Technology Series. My name is Inna Sergichuk, and I'm happy to present another webinar of a series of free online events with famous IT speakers and lecturers. During the webinar, you can ask your questions to the speaker using Q&A box that you can see in your panel. And please note that if you have any technical issues or related questions, you can use chat box. You can also find it in your panel. So just again, if you have a question to the speaker, so please use Q&A box and speaker will be able to read your questions and answer them. If you have any technical issues or related questions, you can use just chat box. So today, our guest speaker is Nicholas Frankel, our software architect with more than 12 years of experience, IT lecturer, speaker, and author. So I'm happy to introduce to you Nicholas Frankel and pass a word to him. Nicholas?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight. I will try to first share my desktop. And yes, thanks, Ina. Thanks for this introduction. So now that should be good. So welcome to this webinar about Spring Boot and DevOps. So as Ina kindly introduced me, I'm Nicolas Frankel. I'm a developer and an architect. I've always been working as a consultant. I'm also a teacher in higher education university and trainer, and as well, obviously, a speaker. So tonight we will talk about Spring Boot and DevOps. And in this case, DevOps, as you know, may mean many things. In some cases, this is about developers and operation collaboration. I'm sorry to tell you that, but in this case, Spring Boot cannot help you with communication in your organization. That you will have to do yourself. Another point or trait of DevOps is to treat your infrastructure as code, meaning that you will script your installation of stuff. Again, I'm very sorry, but Spring Boot cannot help you with that. You've got dedicated tools. You've got Puppet, you've got Chef, you've got Ansible. Those are very great tools and they work very well. Again, is it to automate everything through the scripts? No, I'm sorry, Spring Boot cannot help you with that. So we will restrict our DevOps scope on this talk about three main stuff about your application. The first thing is metadata. The second or else checks, and the third are metrics. And I will go into more details on each point. But first, let me tell you a little story. And the story, as you can see about the picture, is not a very nice one. So let's imagine that you are a developer, which probably is your case, so it's not too far-fetched. And as a developer, you have been tasked to work on a project, and it's Friday, and you have finished your tasks. The project is ready to be put into production. So what you do, you contact the ops guy, and you tell him, hey, you know, I have this application, please put it into production. And the guy asks you about the operational manual, so the thing that lets him handle everything, that if there is an exception, what he should do. And you are an experienced developer, so you know about that already. And since you know about that already, you handle him the operational manual, and you are very happy about that. And then he asks you about, yeah, what is in the operational manual? Did you provide a sample of expected exceptions and what you should do? He should do with that. For example, if there is an out of memory error, then you should restart the server. And yeah, the operational manual that you wrote contains that. So for the second time, you are very happy with yourself and you tell him that everything is fine. Then he asked, Okay, but how do I monitor the application? And this one you didn't expect, because monitoring was never part of any specification of the application that you were tasked to develop, because monitoring is a non-functional requirement. And basically in specification, you mainly find functional requirements, such as if the user does this, the application should do that. Monitoring is out of scope. Business users don't care about monitoring. That's not their job. For them, it's expected. It's like for persistence of data, of databases, is just expected. And basically, at this point, you have three options. The first option is to go back to the project manager, because in every project, there must be a project manager, and you will ask him or her for more budget. Probably she will be very pissed off because she didn't plan that. And in turn, she will ask for more budget, which probably will make him or her look very bad. So she might agree to that, but probably you will get a very bad annual review, which is not probably not your goal. The second option is you go to the project manager, and since you know him or her very well, then you are both aligned, again, the ops guy, and you push the application to production anyway. And it's not problem, operational guys have no power. So since the project manager is representing the business, he has power, he has budget, so he can say, yes, you will push it to production. The problem with this story, this option, is that in this case, if there is any error at 3 a.m. in the morning, you will be the one to be called and awakened and to handle everything. And without monitoring, it will be very hard for you. The third option, which is also very bad, is, hey, it's Friday and it's nearly the weekend, and days have 24 hours. So you still have 48 hours to act monitoring anything to make the ops guy happy. And basically, it happens for every project, because business users, as I said, don't care about monitoring. And so far, you have to act everything yourself, and you have to do it every time for every application, because there is no single framework that handles it for you. The good thing is this story might be over if you use Spring Boot, because Spring Boot provides exactly what I promised you. This is monitoring, health checks, and metadata. And those are non-functional requirements again. So they are probably never written, and they should be part of your job when you are doing estimates. Also, what Spring Boot provides, which is a little out of the scope of general non-functional requirements, is stuff that is really specific to Spring. How many times do you want to check the configuration of your application, of your running application? So, for example, it might work on your machine, but then when it's deployed on the server, it doesn't work so well. So you might want to check about the beans that are really instantiated by Spring in a remote environment. Or you might want to check the configuration values, the real configuration values, those that are used in another environment, or your controller mappings, and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of stuff that Spring Boot makes available. So I've talked enough. This is time for a little demo. And in this case, I will use the Spring Pet Clinic. As some of you know, the Spring Pet Clinic is a very old legacy Spring application, but the Spring Clinic that I will use is the one who has been ported to Spring Boot by a kind guy on GitHub. And so I will use it to display the stuff. So I will switch to that, and I will just use Maven to launch the application. And while it starts, I can show you This is a standard Maven project, source main, source Java, source main Java, source main resources. The tests are here. There is a POM. There is an application.properties. So it's a real Spring Boot application. And now that it has started, we can see the results. So as you can see, it's a Spring application. You can go there and it's handled by Spring Security. So you can just try to authenticate, and you can search for owners of pets. There is a list, so you can go to another page. You have the list of veterinarian, which can be seen as an XML, and you have an error to check that, yeah, everything works fine, an inbox for messaging. Well, display of feature of Spring Boot, right? So, and I'd like to monitor this application. So if you have to remember one thing about this presentation, one little single thing is that I will add something which is called the Spring Boot starter actuator. And it's in the org Spring Framework Boot namespace. And now, if I restart the application, so I only added this single Maven dependency, nothing more, nothing less. And just by adding this dependency, now I told you I want metadata. I have metadata, which is for the moment empty because I didn't add any. And I can have my else check, and I can have my metrics. So here it's not very readable. It's basically JSON, but JSON that is not formatted, and that is not very great. So the first thing to do afterwards is to go to your application.properties and to just add a property, which is called spring.json. And since you are using IntelliJ, then you can already have something which is very helpful. Serialization, indent, output equals true. Now, if I restart the application, and since, sorry, I didn't change any class or do anything, I just have to restart the application. Unfortunately, it's not reloaded every time. Now, if I refresh, that's very easy for me to see that now it's very nicely formatted. And as I told you, you can go on the beans subcontext, and now you can see that here are listed all the beans of your applications, and also you can have the config files, if I remember well, config props it's called, yeah. And here you can see the value of the configuration when it's deployed. And in the latest, and here is something I didn't try before, in the latest Spring Boot, so 1.3 release, there is something called log files. No, log file perhaps. No. So sorry about that. I thought that was logs. I didn't check too much. But I know that there is a context, sorry, to let you check also your logs, which is quite helpful because in many cases, you don't have access to the logs because the server you don't have access to, and it's always a bore to ask for the logs to the guys who has the permissions. Don't worry, I can find it again. So here, this is basically everything that Spring Boot gives you out of the box, provided you've added the actuator as a dependency. So the first thing that we might want to add is metadata. And metadata is what? Basically, metadata, as its name implies, it can be anything. A recurring problem that I have when I go to an application is which application is it? For example, I might want to know about its application ID, about its group ID. Those are Maven coordinates, but also about its version. And its version can be from Maven or from Git. So I want to know everything. So let's hack something. So the first thing that we might want to do is to add a dummy information. And let's say that I will say that info.application.dummy equal my cool property. So everything that starts with info, I might increase it a bit. Everything that starts with info will find its way into the info endpoint. So let's restart the application. It didn't start, yes. So here with just a single line of configuration, I've added a metadata. This metadata is interesting for sure, but it's not enough because it's static metadata. And as I told you, I probably wanted to have dynamic metadata, and such dynamic metadata is about the group ID of my application in the POM. So I want to have this information here, artifact ID, and this information here. So I will say group ID, which is what will be displayed. And if you've used Maven before, and basically that's what I did before Spring Boot, what I did was to hack a servlet to create a property file and to filter it through Maven. So in Maven, you have a possibility to say that such and such resources can be filtered, so you can write information from the POM into your file, and then you only have to read it. So this is basically what you do. The good thing about this is that Spring Boot lets you do it without using this feature of Maven, or more precisely, it does it for you. So just by saying project.groupID, which Maven user might recognize as something from the POM, and here I will say application ID, and here I will say also application ID, and again I will do the same, sorry, for the version. So project.groupID, it will find it here, the version ID here, and the artifact ID here. I will run Spring Boot again. And then when it's restarted, automatically with only configuration, oh, it was not application ID, sorry, it was artifact ID. So here it didn't source anything, but the rest, he used the group ID, which is good, and the version, which I forgot the N, is also good. So that will be for the next restart. It's artifact ID, because this is what is written in the POM. So you can, here you can have everything. You can have your organization, your anything. So this is quite interesting. But the version, I told about Maven, but I also told about Git. So I probably also want some Git cool stuff. And how do I do that? Normally in your project, there is a .git folder, and there is a plugin that was not developed by Spring Boot. It was developed by a Scala guy, if I remember well. And this plugin lets you create a file that will output in a property file everything that you want about your Git repository. So basically, this this stuff is pl.project13.mail. The artifact ID is git commit ID plugin. The version, I think the version is something like that. And I have to execute it. If you know Maven, you know that you have to bind it to a phase. So I will say that I want to execute the goals called revision, which will create the file. The goal is automatically bound to the create resource phase, if I remember well. Now there is a little problem. If I just do that, if I stop there, it will output it in the console when it builds, but it won't create the file. So by default, it doesn't create the file. I don't know why. So what I will do is I will say that I want it to generate the file. So generate git property files equals true. The second problem is if I don't configure it properly, it will generate the file under the src resources. So it will be put into your resources, which I don't want. What I want is I just want it to be built and not put into my source control management. So I have to tell it, and that's good because there is a configuration option, to put it under projects dot build dot output directory, and its name must be git.properties. This is the name that Spring Boot expects. Now, if I restart again, you will see that my my log file is a little different here. You can see that there is a lot more outputs. Basically, it's reading my Git repo and outputting stuff. The rest is exactly the same. Now, if I go to my info endpoint, I've got some Git information. Basically, I don't have everything, and that is not so good. Because when you look at the generated file, which is, sorry, I don't see it. I have to check into targets, classes, git.properties. So here you see that there is a lot of stuff, but Spring Boot only takes only a few of them. Sorry, only a few of them for the branch and the commit ID and the commit time. And when you look at the source code of Git, it's because it loads the file not into a big map, but into a very limited object, which only has 3 attributes. So how can we do that? How can we have everything? This is a good exercise that we will do, or more precisely that I will do, because it shows you also how flexible Spring Boot can be. So I will create a new configuration class. So I will say that it's info-config. And since it's a configuration class, I will annotate it with configuration. And just by doing that, I will create a new bean. And I will say it will return a new info endpoint. The info endpoint expects a map. So I will say int hash map of string objects. So by doing that, basically, what am I doing? I'm providing a new info endpoint. And just by doing that, Spring Boot won't provide its own because it will detect that I am providing my info endpoint. So it won't create its own because there can be a single one info endpoint. So now if I refresh, what do you expect? It will be completely empty, which is, of course, not what I want. So the first thing to do in this case is to fill these linked hash map with stuff that is relevant. And how is it relevant? So the first thing that is relevant is about my own information. So I told you everything that starts with info will find its way into my map. So what I'll say here, I will auto-wire my environments. So this is a configurable environment. And by doing that, what I can create is a method. Like that. And there is an object, and don't ask me about this object because it's a very, very strange object. Basically, it lets you validate properties, and it accepts a map of string objects, and this is a factory. And I just have to remember import class is the map. So I will create this factory. Sorry, I forgot about that. Oh, what did I create? New linked. 2 seconds, please. Yes, I will have to do that. I will have to create a new linked hash map again. So I have to provide an object of this type. And then with this factory, I will say factory.set property sources. And basically what I will do is I will get all property sources from the environment. But I will only be interested in those that starts with info, because that was the point. I only want things that start with info. And when it's done, I can put in the hash map, in this linked hash map, the results of the computation by the factory. So basically, I will let the factory handle everything for me. And now I have an exception. Yes, I will say throw exception. Again, I can add an exception. I don't care. Probably that won't happen. If it happens, I will let Spring Boot's initialization handle it for me. So what did I do wrong? Line 27. Yes, I forgot about that. Sorry. Now that should work better. Now, if I go back to my endpoints, so everything that started with info appears again. So I've got my application version, group ID, DONI, and application ID. That's quite nice. But still, my point was to add the Git properties, and still I don't have any Git properties right now. So what I can do, I will also read declaratively the thing about the Git property. So basically, I will tell that I want something which is found in spring.git.properties in the class path git.properties. And here there is a private resources git props. So that is very easy way to read a file in Git and put it into a resource. Now I will do the same stuff. I will fill my info map, but this time with Git props. So I will pass it around. Since I'm very lazy, I will do some copy paste here, because basically it's the same stuff. And I will now not set the property sources, but directly set the properties themselves. And it's very easy because they are here. So what I will do is use something called a properties loaders util. If you are using Spring and you are reading properties, that's very, very easy to do, because basically that prevents you from using an input stream and checking that it's not null and stuff like that. So here I will do that, and here it tells me that it's expecting loads properties, not load all properties, sorry, it's load properties. And here I set the properties, and I put everything. Put all the factory dot objects. And here I do some stuff. Now you might notice that I didn't set the target name here, because if I set the target name, that will it means that it will remove the git dot something, and that everything in my endpoint will be at the root, which I don't want. I want all my git information to be under a git something. And that is quite important, because I want something which is readable. JSON is meant to be readable by machine, but it's also meant to be readable by humans. And in this case, this is very important. Oh, what did I do? Sorry. Sorry about that. Git dot properties, not column. So that's the good thing about Spring or Spring Boot, that if you have an exception, which I have again, now really, that must be better. It tells you at the start of the application, not at runtime, which is quite good. Oh, sorry. Info. No, it doesn't want. I have to restart. So here I still have my info, and here I have everything that was in my git.property in a JSON format, which is very nice. So you can see everything. So back to the presentation. Before going to health check, so basically what we did in this part is we added the actuator. We just told it, hey, just please have a nice formatter for my JSON. And it worked. We already had everything we wanted. And only because we wanted to have everything from Git, then we had to add something. But if you don't need to go further, it can be done in a very lightweight manner with only a couple of configuration. You don't need to code anything. So health checks. Health checks basically are a very good way to monitor your application. Because basically your application depends on dependencies. So the most well-known dependency is the file system, because probably you're writing a lot of files. But another well-known and very old dependency is the database, because I don't know many applications that don't run without database. There might be normal standard SQL database, there might be no SQL databases. But basically every application has to persist its data. So a health check is a wrapper, is a monitor of a single dependency. And each checks returns an health object. And an health object is something which is very simple. It has a status. And the most well-known status are up and down. Basically, if your database is up, it works. If your database is down, it doesn't work. But they all, the Spring Boot team added some different statuses, because sometimes you don't know if it works or doesn't work. It might be very strange, but sometimes you know it doesn't work. And out of service means it's down, but in a timely fashion. You know it's out of service. You know when it comes back. And this this status might come with details. So even if it's up, you might want to have additional information about this health check. So this is very cool. All health checks, so all health checks objects that are scanned by Spring Boot will be aggregated. And the health endpoint will aggregate all the checks. And they will be serialized into JSON. And if every health check is up, then your application will be considered up and running. If only one is down, then your application will be considered down. So every dependency must run in order for your application to be okay. And the good thing is you don't need to parse the JSON to know about that, because Spring will also set the HTTP status code to 500 something. So just let's check here about the health check. And here we can see that I will just try to increase the size. Zoom. No, not minus, plus. Yeah, much better. So here we can see that the application status is up because there are two dependencies, two checks around dependencies. The first is the disk space, and the second is a DB. And of course, the DB is a HSQL in-memory DB, so it probably must be up. And my laptop is brand new, so there is a lot of free space. Anyway, we can check that what I told you about the HTTP status code here. Here we have a status 200 here because everything is up. Now what I will do, I will do something very bad. I will add a new dependency to my application, but without configuring it in the first part, which obviously is not a good thing to do, but works for me in this case. So I will add data sol or starter data sol or. So now my application expects to find a Solr instance on a default port, which I didn't configure. So there is no Solr running on my machine. So now, if I go back to the health check, it should tell me that, yeah, here there is a 503 status, and here it tells me that there is a new dependency, that it's down, there is an error, and it tells me, yeah, you know, I was expecting something on localhost 8983/Solr, there is nothing responding, and my application itself is considered down. So if your ops tools cannot parse JSON, they can at least parse the HTTP status code. or they can ask something to do that, something to do that. So that's very good about Spring Boot, is that most of the starters that you find already contain a health check. So if you add dependency and you don't configure them properly, it's already done for you. Of course, that might not be enough, because another very common dependency is a web service in nowadays architecture. You are probably your application are dependent on many web services, if not many, at least some. So if the web service doesn't work, you want to know it. And that is a very good way to do that. So let's pretend that we want to create a new health check. Let's do that. So let's create a new health check. Health check config. Let's say health config because I'm lazy. It's a configuration class. And here I will create a new method. It will return a health indicator. And this health indicator will be the one to return me the health object. And this health object, I will say health dot, let's say it's up for the sake, and with details, hello world. I will remove this one, so I'm expecting everything to be up and running. So normally here I should have three different dependencies: the disk space, the SQL database, as well as this new health indicator. And everything must be up, so it's back to 200. And here I have my new indicator, which status up, and with my provided details. You might notice that this health indicator name is taken from the name of the method. And yeah, in this case, it's not very interesting to have health indicator. So either you might want to rename your method, or even better, if you like space, and Java methods don't accept space, you might want to say that the name of the bean is what you want. Now, if I restart, I will still have all three health checks, and one of them must read my custom indicator with spaces. So this might be cosmetic, but perhaps your ops guy wants this. So here it is. So that's quite cool. So in this part, we saw that every dependency of Spring Boot comes wrapped with out-of-the-box health checks, that all health checks are aggregated into a single health check endpoint, and that you can add your own health indicators that can wrap around web services and something. What you might want to consider when you're doing this is what is considered up. For example, for a DB, you might want to just check that you can ping the database. You might want to check that you can take a connection out of the data pool. Or you might want to check if we are using Oracle, that you can select dual from dual. Or you might want to go further and do a query on the database to check that, yeah, it works. So this is the stuff that you have to ask yourself, because considering a dependency to be up is really a matter of your application. For the last part, we will talk about metrics. And metrics are very important, because it's not because all your health checks are up that your application is responding. For example, the database might be up, but perhaps that you have too many requests on your application and it cannot respond in time. So following the metrics is a very important part of the ops work. So there is a nice stuff that is made by Dropwizard, and Dropwizard is a big competitor of Spring Boot. And before it was the only one. I must say that, in fact, Spring Boot is a big competitor of Dropwizard. And Dropwizard has a very cool library about metrics. And it offers a metrics model as well as exporters to backends, so different kind of backends. So, and much more, but let's stick to that. About the metrics model, basically, it offers more, but at least those two simple models. And the first is a gauge. The gauge is basically a value, a metric value, anything. So, for example, the response time of a page is considered a gauge. There is a specialized kind of gauge, which is a counter. And the counter is more specialized because basically you can infer the value of the next check when with the current value. For example, the number of times the page was seen. If you reload the page, then you know that it will be +1. So a counter is a very simple counter, a very simple gauge that gets incremented each time. As for backends, basically, a very good backend that you can send your metrics to is gconsole. Before going there, I just wanted to check that, yeah, we can have the metrics in JSON. And if I go to my application and I check, for example, let's say, now I have to reduce it. I want to say the error. We can check here that there will appear something with error. Yes. So here it's called oops with U, so like French. So it has been called 4 times. If I refresh it, so I call it one more time, here it's now 5, of course. So here it's why it's a counter. And as for the gauge, the oops star now has taken me 13 milliseconds. If I refresh it, I have no idea. Probably it takes more time. Yeah, I have no idea how much time it will take. So 11. So I already have everything in on my page, but I want to send it to something which is more ops friendly. And one of those things, is a gconsole. And gconsole is a way to check your GMX metrics. So GMX are basically Java management beans around everything that you want in any Java application that you want. And probably Tomcat has already GMX beans around its own stuff. And through GMX beans, you can get, set, or call methods of any of your beans. Of course, if you don't provide a GMX bean around any of your objects, you won't have this kind of feature, but you might want to let people manage. That's why it's called management, manage your object. For example, you can use GMX to configure log4j, to configure SLF4j, and stuff like that. gconsole is very easy to use. Basically, you just launch gconsole like that, and then you can choose your local process, and you can choose the JVM you want to connect on. And here, I already have something. So here you can see my embedded Tomcat of Spring Boot, and you can see the JDK logging, and here you can some stuff about Spring Boot. So how can I send my metrics to the gconsole, to GMX? Quite easily, in fact. I will create, again, a new class. And this new class, I will call it monitoring config. It's a configuration. And here I will say that it will return a metric writer. I don't have to forget that it's a bean. And I don't know why. I also don't have to forget to say that it exports a metric writer. And that is in one of the 1.3m something, they added this. I don't know why, but you have to add it if you want to send it to GMX. And I will return a new GMX metric writer. And here you can see that there is a dependency. It requires an mbin exporter. The good thing is I can tell Spring Boot, or Spring in this case, to inject it for me, like that. Now, if I restart, you will see that, unfortunately, something is wrong. So it won't work, but it's expected. And here it said that it was expecting an mbin exporter, so it was expecting this, but it found 2. So here I don't know why, but you have basically in your bin factory you have 2 mbin exporters. So you have to tell Spring which one you want. So that's quite easy. You say that you want the bin, which is named. Sorry. Endpoint mbin exporter. And though IntelliJ yells at me, normally it should work. Yeah. So here I still have my stuff in metrics in HTTP in JSON format. Of course, this is a new metric, so I have to get back to the hooks to add here the hooks again. And now, if I reconnect to my new running JVM, you will see some new stuff appearing. And here, everything that appears here in my page also appears here in GMX with exactly the same value. So let's say that here we see status 200 oops star and the attributes of value. So value is 1, and the oops star, the attributes, here is 336, here is 336. So we've got the exam same stuff. But of course, it's much easier for an ops guy to handle this kind of metrics in GMX than in JSON, because probably he has a tooling to do that. Of course, it might not be enough, because the problem with GMX is that, yeah, you only have one single value. Probably your ops guys, and probably you as well, want dashboards. So let's go back about drop wizard metrics. And drop wizard metrics also provides reporters, and it provides HTTP reporters, but we don't need them because we already have something doing that in Spring Boot. It also provides GMX, but we already have something. The good thing about that is also provides a Graphite reporter. And basically Graphite is a dashboard to store values. And it's very simple in a sense. It just listens, you send it values, and then it can plot them on a dashboard. So let's try to do that. The first thing to do is, what I will do is I will up a vagrant with a graphite already on it. So it might take some time. Let's leave it at that for the moment. And let's create now our own monitoring config that will send data to Graphite. So here we've got something. Oh, but what did I forget? I forget to add a dependency. So what I will need is to add a new dependency here. And the dependency will be metrics graphite. Now it would be good if it found the group ID. No, so I have to remember it must be org.drop wizards. Oh, I don't remember, so I will have to check my notes. Sorry about that. Org drop wizards metrics. IO drop wizard metrics. Yes. So now I can use it inside there, and I will just need to create my graphite stuff. So here, this is a little strange because basically we don't need a bin itself. It's just that the way that Spring Boot works, it will return a graphite reporter as a bin. But basically we don't need that. What we need is to create a representation of the graphite instance. And the graphite instance, is just like that. So it runs on localhost because I'm running in my Vagrant, and it runs on this port. The second stuff to do is to create the reporter. So the graphite reporter is not instantiated. There is a builder. So there is a graphite reporter for registry. Now you see that it expects a metric registry because Drop Wizard Metrics is built around the notion of registry. The good thing is, again, because we added the metrics graphite, there is a dependency on metrics core. And as soon as Spring Boot sees that there is a metrics core dependency, it will instantiate a metrics registry for us and make it available in the factory. So here we can say that we want a metric registry, and it will provide it for us. So now there is this for registry. I will do that so it will be more readable. And we can build the stuff with graphite. And we will return the report. Now, it won't work in this case because there is something which is very important that you might forget every time, is you have to start the report. And let's say that the reporter will be started and will do stuff every 500 milliseconds. What I also like to do is to have in my graphite stuff a prefix. So I will use a boot prefix so I can have a nice dashboard and not have everything at the root. Now, if I restart my application, now it must be up. Yes, I hope so. And if I go on localhost 880, here we can have a look at graphite. Yes. I just checked, and we see that it seems to work pretty well because there is no exception. So if I check now my graphite, I see that there is something called boot, right? And since it's not the first time that I do this demo, there is already some metrics. But unfortunately, let's say that I'm only interested in the oops stuff, and I want to see the oops in the last 5 minutes. And there is nothing. But let's go there and make some request on it to check and perhaps find owners, veterinarian, other stuff. And now, if I do it again, we can see here that it appeared. Of course, it's not very useful like that. So I will say that here I will add this one, and sorry, I will move it, and owners, find, yes. So now if we browse, we can have a nice dashboard, and we can see that there are several points around it that are different. Okay, and this is probably what your ops and you want, because you have a view of the trends, how, when it happened, and stuff like that. So this is very, very interesting. And so this is a response time, and this is basically what might be very interesting to you and your ops. So now comes the point when you say, okay, that's very good what you showed me, but how do I add my own metric? Because this is good and nice, but I want to also have my own metric in it. Okay, let's do that. Let's create your own metric. And I will create a class. Let's make it static because it will be easier. And my custom metric. And this metric will measure anything. Let's say that we want to measure something random. So we will create a new random. So private random. Let's make it final because it's nice. Random equal new secure random, which is not very secure, but let's think that it's secured. And here I will say that I will random between 1 and 100, or 0 or 100. Next boolean, sorry, next int. So it will be a value. So how do I output it? What I will need is something which is called the Gauge service. The Gauge service is also provided by Spring Boot. So I will use the Gauge service and say, okay, I will pass it as a constructor argument. So I will say public my custom metric Gauge service. Okay, and now I will say Gauge service.submit my metric name. So let's say boot.gauge.custom and then. So now you've got a problem because first we have to create a bean, and bean will be public my custom metric. I will return a new custom metric, and I have to pass it to Gauge service. So here I will ask Spring Boot to inject it for me. So this is quite good, but still, how does it compute? When is this measure method called? And in fact, that's a very good question, and it's very easy. It's mind-blowingly easy to call it. You will say, I won't call it. I will schedule it. I will schedule it with, let's say, a fixed rate of, so this is milliseconds. Let's make it 500 milliseconds. And just by doing that, it will send every so half a second, it will send a random value to the service, to the Gauge service, and it will be exported to my dashboard. So let's restart and check. And now let's have it here. I will have to refresh because I need the tree, basically. And here you see that I have a new custom stuff. Again, I will say only the first, let's say, 5 minutes. And it will be auto-refreshed. And now I hope it works, because it's a demo syndrome. So here I have it here, like that. So it's used at least by Spring Boot. Now it would be good if I also add it here. If not, I will be sorry about that. I'm already sorry. Okay, doesn't seem to work. But believe me, it should work. Okay, now we have this little problem because right now what happens is that probably in your development environment, you don't have a Vagrant, you don't have a Graphite. So this is what will happen is if you don't have Graphite, then Spring Boot will be very unhappy because it will try to send stuff to Graphite and it won't work. And this is probably what you don't want in your work environments, is to have lots of useless junk in your log. So you have two ways to handle that. Either you use Spring Boot conditional on missing bin, meaning, okay, let's have a development profile. And if I use a development profile, there is a development profile, I won't do anything. And if it doesn't find the development profile, then I will use Graphite. This is good, but in my opinion, it's a little complex. And also, it also puts the responsibility of sending the metrics to your application, which is not cool because, yeah, it doesn't use a lot, but it still uses a little performance. And you don't want that. So what we did at my current customer, we define only the GMX reporter. So we basically send only stuff to GMX. And then there is something called GMX trends, which takes the stuff from all GVM and aggregates them in Graphite. And it's very interesting because then you can have a per GVM view of your stuff. And that is generally what is done. So that concludes the part about metrics. And in this part, we have seen that sending the metrics to GMX is basically a no-brainer. It requires just one single method, one single bean in Java config or XML. You can probably do that in XML, although I never even tried. And if you are interested in sending stuff to Graphite, it's also quite easy. And you can create your own custom metrics because, yeah, there might be metrics that are not provided out of the box by Spring Boot that you might be interested in. Remember also that metrics are not only technical, so you can use this stuff to have analytics on your applications and use exactly the same metrics, put it in the same lots, and have correlation between the metrics. That, for example, you can check that if we are in an e-commerce shop, we can check that if you have a loss of performance, or let's say I have lost 10% of performance, I lost 5% of sales. So that might be very interesting to your business users. And that might be also interesting to you, because then you have facts that really tell that they should be more cautious and more interested in the technical infrastructure, and then not bitch about, I don't know, $2,000 for a new server. And that is very, very, very important, in my opinion. Of course, what I just showed there is only the tip of the iceberg. You can go much, much, much further. One of the things that you might want is, if you are a REST-oriented guy, you might probably object that what I did is very good, but unfortunately, it doesn't respect the REST principles. Yes, why doesn't it respect the REST principles? It doesn't respect the REST principles because I knew about the endpoints, so I know where to browse, and this is completely opposite to what REST tells. My resource should be self-discoverable. So first, I will remove the graphite reporter because I don't want to have my logs not nicely put. And what I want is I will just add a new dependency here. And I always have problem pronouncing it, so I will try the head OS. And basically, it's the hyper media as the engine of state application, of application state. And by doing that, and changing a subcontext. So here what I'm doing is basically I want every one of my endpoints to be served under the manage subcontext. Because I want to isolate them. I don't want to have any end user, just magically getting the handle of that stuff. So now if I go to manage, hey, please don't do that to me. Oh. So here, the good thing about that is that now, as I told you, I've got the manage metrics endpoints, and here I have a new stuff that tells you where you are, and this is the OS stuff. And normally, again, at the roots of the manage endpoints, no, it doesn't work like that. Sorry, guys. So here, normally, and again, the demo syndrome, probably, you should have a list of all your endpoints. And that is very restful because then now you can click and choose. I don't know why it doesn't work. I will probably have to check afterwards. And here you can see that if you go to health, it doesn't work anymore. It's because I have just used a subcontext. So you have the else, info, everything. So this was it. If you are interested, you can find the sources for the demo on my GitHub. So github.com/nfrankel/enhancepetclinic. And the branch on which it is a branch DevOps 1.3. You can follow me on Twitter if you were interested. If you want to offer me plenty of money for jobs, you can connect to me on LinkedIn. You can read my blog. And as some of you might know, I've written a book since 1 year ago, or perhaps a little less. And tomorrow is a Black Friday, so I'm making a nice discount on it. So if you are interested, just check. Now I think that it might be the time for some Q&A. I will just have to get back to the stuff here. Yep. And now I will have some question. Oh, okay, let me check. So many questions are about my Q&A. Why not hear you? Microphone, type questions. Okay.
It seems we don't have any questions, Nicholas.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So either I was very good or very bad, which is not a good thing.
I think very good.
I hope so. So I hope it's if you have any questions, then you can tweet me, and or perhaps you can send the questions to Ina, and then I will try my best to answer them by mail.
Yes, you always can send your questions to our email that you can see in your invitations, and we will be happy to answer them. I think Nicholas will be happy to answer all the questions. So thank you, Nicholas, so much for interesting presentations. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And we would like to ask you to fill the short questionnaire that you will see right now. Your feedback is very important to us, and we will really appreciate your answers. Thank you again, everyone, and stay tuned with LTS.